Hello and welcome to this section on data abstraction. As we have seen previously what is data encapsulation, data abstraction is also a concept that you can choose to implement in your coding style. So let's look at what are the section objectives. After completing the section, you will be able to understand what is data abstraction concept. We'll do an example of data abstraction to understand the concept, and we'll look at the real life use case of data abstraction. Then we'll work with exercises, resources and quiz using the data abstraction concept. So let's understand what is data abstraction. Hello and welcome to the lecture on example of data abstraction. Let's understand data abstraction with an example. Okay, so let's create a folder. Call it abstraction. Let's open up this file. Let's write an abstract class. Let's define a property called as color. And let's define an abstract function, calculate area. Then let's define a method to get the value of the color property. So that is basically get color, which will return the color for us. Okay, so the shape is saying that okay, whoever gonna implement me, please implement this method. Okay, and there are some properties and methods already available, you can reuse it. Okay, so it's kind of an abstraction because some are implemented and some has been shared with the child classes. Okay, so it's not completely like an interface which everything has defined in the interface and ask child to implement it, but it does some kind of abstraction wherein the parent class implements some of the methods and then leave some of the methods for child to implement it. And here in the shape, it's very good example. All the shapes will have a color, all the shapes need to get the color, but each shape will implement calculate area by its own, and it has to implement calculate area because the formula will be different for calculating the area of a rectangle or could be any other shapes. Okay, so let's define another class, rectangle, which extends the shapes. Then we'll define another class called as circle. That basically also extends from the shape, so they both have to implement this function. Okay, now if you see how to calculate the area, to calculate the area the rectangle have its own properties, okay, which cannot be put in the shape, and that property are basically length and the breadth, right? And you can have a constructor here using which you can assign the class properties. Okay, and you can pass in the color as well, right? And then you can always access the color from your parent class. Okay, how do you calculate the area? You can say $this of length multiplied by $this of breadth. Okay, that's the formula for calculating the area of a rectangle. What about the circle? Circle have a radius, so let's define a radius. Then we need to have a constructor, and we need a radius to it. And how do you calculate the area of a circle? You have to multiply radius with the pi value. So you can multiply with 3.14, that's the value of the pi. Then you can calculate the radius of a circle. Okay, so let's create our objects now. So rectangle class actually accept 3 parameters. First is the color, so we'll say it's a red color, then length and the breadth. Okay, and using this now you can print the calculate area. Okay, and then you can have circle, which is blue in color, and you have to pass in the radius, so just pass the radius. Okay, and then you can calculate the area of a circle. Okay, so this is a very good concept of understanding the data abstraction, because some of the properties like get color, okay, if you write a get color, you will be able to get the color as well. So you want to get the color of the rectangle, you can get it like this, and you can even get the color of the circle. And you know, get color, the child classes don't have to implement it because it's gonna be same. So you're reducing the duplication here, and you're doing an abstraction wherein some of the methods has been implemented in the parent class which can be reused in the child classes, and some of the method which parent class don't know how to implement it and knows that the child classes will have its own implementation, it leaves that thing to the child class to implement it. So before we run that, we have to mention the class as abstract, and now let's run our code. Okay, so you have your rectangle area calculated, and then we have our color, then the circle area is calculated, that's the radius, and then we have the color blue for the circle. Okay, it's not much about what you are displaying it here, but more of a concept of how you organize your code. Okay, so that's the example of data abstraction, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the exercise section on data abstraction. So you have to show the data abstraction concept using company class and employee class. So company class will have some methods, and also it will dictate the employee class to implement some of the methods. So here is the exercise that you have to do. You have to define a company abstract class. You have to define a $name property in the company class. Then you write setter and getter methods for $name in the company class. Then you define a set expert with a subject as a parameter for abstract class in the company class. Then you define an employee class which extends from the company class. Then you implement the set expert in the employee class, and employee class will have a property called $subject. So assign that value to the $subject. Okay, so you have to understand how to write these kind of things. Okay, and you have to show data abstraction. If someone asks you, can you show on data abstraction? So you have to understand data abstraction can be explained with any of this concept, wherein you implement some of the methods in the parent and you leave some of the implementation to be implemented by its child. Okay, So this exercise, do this exercise to understand how to work with data abstraction. Okay, so pause this video here and do the exercise now. Okay, so welcome back. So we'll open up to the material folder and then we will open up the data abstraction exercise file and then we'll verify this. Okay, so as per the assignment, we have to define a company abstract class with a $name as a property. Then you have getter and setter methods which can access the $name property. Then you have a setExpert abstract method defined in the company class, and you're asking the child class to implement the setExpert with the subject as the input parameter. So employee class basically extends the company class. So once it extends, it has to implement the abstract functions. So it implements the subject expert by defining a subject as a property and then assign that input parameter to the class properties. Okay, so this is a concept wherein employee can now get to access the name of the company via the getter and setter methods. Okay, and you don't have to create an instance of a company class, but the child class can create an instance of a child and then it can get to access all the parent class without creating an instance. Okay, so that's the concept of a data abstract, where the parent class implements some of the core features that all the child class can reuse, and it leaves some of the methods for the child class to implement it. Okay, so that's the concept of a data abstraction. If someone asks you how do you write it, you can give this classic example to help them understand how the data abstraction can be written. Okay, so that's the exercise on data abstraction. I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the summary section of data abstraction. So by now you should be able to understand what is data abstraction. You should know how to explain the data abstraction concept and how to write a program to show that concept. And you should also understand what is the real life use case of data abstraction and when to use them. And I hope you have worked through exercises, resources and quiz to understand the data abstraction concept. Okay, so that's all the lectures on data abstraction. I'll see you in the next one.